Hi again, everybody. I'm Rob Rosenthal with AskTheLawyers.com, and welcome to another episode of Ask the Lawyer. In the New York City area these days, it seems like there's as many cranes dotting the sky as there are buildings. And with all that construction, also comes construction accidents and injuries. And then it's what to do next. And that's what we're going to ask the lawyer about today. Here to answer our questions is attorney Michael Greenspan of the law firm Greenspan Greenspan in the New York City area. Mike, thank you for taking some time to be with us today.
Good to speak with you.
Now, of course, I was exaggerating about the cranes a little bit, but there is plenty of construction in your area, is there not?
There's no shortage of construction in this area, that's for sure.
And it seems like here lately, especially, there's been a jump in construction accidents.
Yeah, there have been a lot in recent week, and certainly in 2019 alone, and over the last year, there have been a number of accidents. There have been a number of fatalities. And what it underlines is that construction is a very dangerous business. And unlike when you and I go to work, our families don't have to worry about whether we're going to come back in one piece. But if you're the family of a construction worker, especially if you're working at elevation, and especially if you're working for a contractor whose idea of safety is to preserve profits over safety, you're going to have a potential problem. These families have to worry because unfortunately, construction workers can get hurt and sometimes even die on the job because of preventable injuries, preventable accidents.
What are some of the more common injuries and accidents you see coming through your firm?
Generally, what we're seeing they come down in almost two different categories: workers who fall and workers who have objects fall on them. So let's take the workers who fall. When you're working at a height, you could be working on a ladder, on a scaffold, or you can be walking across a temporary ramp and you may encounter a hole. You may have a ladder which was supplied to you by either your boss or another trade, and the ladder might have looked fine, but it wasn't secured properly, or it might have looked fine, turns out to be a very dangerous ladder. And so when you get up there and you start doing your work, the ladder can shift and cause you to fall. These are some of the things, or even we've seen cases where someone has is doing the course of their work, they're lugging something heavy, and they step through an opening which they had no idea was there, and they've fallen.
Do you find that in many cases the safety precautions that could have been taken are pretty simple, or are these very complicated precautions that need to be followed?
No, and you know, Rob, that's what probably one of the most frustrating things is for a family, is that whenever someone gets hurt, the question is, how could this happen and why? And when you look at safety on a construction site, so many simple things that can be done if the companies just cared about safety. So the first thing is New York requires companies to provide their workers who are working at a height with safety devices. That could be they can come in various shapes and sizes. Mm-hmm. Let's start with a proper ladder, a proper scaffold, one that won't fall when you're just using it in its normal use. Make sure there are proper guides or railings around the area where someone's working. And in the case of a worker who's going to fall into a hole, surely they could be able to warn the worker, hey, be careful when you're at this area, there's a temporary floor and there might be a hole in that area. Simple, preventable things, giving them harnesses, ladders that work, and other devices that if they give it to them in the first place, there wouldn't be an accident, there wouldn't be a lawsuit.
So let's say I'm a worker on a construction site and I'm injured. What is the process I should follow? Maybe I even think it might have been my fault. Maybe I should have seen that hole there. What should they do? Give us a little bit of an order of things as they should happen.
Well, when this happens, what they need to do is they need to get their family involved. Because when you're hurt, you're in pain, it's really hard to think clearly. And it's very helpful when you can have a loved one who can now do the running around for you. So first, they're going to need to get good medical care. Most of the time, they'll be rushed by ambulance to a hospital, and New York is blessed with some of the finest in the country, so they'll get good medical care. But while that's going on, they're going to need to figure out how are we going to pay for that care. So we need to explain how workers' compensation works, because if someone is injured at work in the course of their work, their medical bills will be covered by workers' compensation. They're going to need an attorney who's going to work with them on how to navigate the whole workers' compensation process. But they're also going to need an attorney to explain the process to them about obtaining compensation against the owners or the general contractors of that construction site who our state has charged with having absolute responsibility for site safety on these construction sites. Because as we've spoken about, this is dangerous work.
Right.
And it is the owner who will be found liable. It is the contractor who will be found liable if the injury results from a gravity-related risk, let's say working at height or on a scaffold, a ladder of the sort, and a safety device was either not provided or the safety device failed. The scaffold broke, the ladder shifted, or the covering for that hole wasn't secured properly, so when the poor guy is walking, he goes through the hole. And that's what the lawyer's job is going to do, to hold those responsible for the safety of the worker responsible for it. So even if a worker might think, well, gee, maybe I should have looked better, maybe I could have done something, it's natural. We're all going to say, how could we have done to prevent this? Well, if you're a worker and you're working on a construction site, you're not a volunteer, you're not just a sightseer, you're working, you're on the job and you're working and you get hurt. The law in New York is that the owner and the general contractor are absolutely liable for your injuries. Your actions, a mistake that you may have made, has nothing to do with it.
And you mentioned workers' comp. Just because I use workers' comp, that doesn't mean then I cannot get damages from the employer, correct?
Well, the way it works is that you can't sue your employer directly because that's covered under workers' compensation law. So you can't sue them. But oftentimes, it's the employer is not the one who's controlling the work site. There's the site owner. There is the general contractor who's overall responsible for site safety. Those are the entities who are going to be involved in the lawsuit.
And a lot of construction workers are independent contractors. Is that sort of what you're talking about there? Is that how does that affect things?
Well, it works in different ways. So if you're an independent contractor, and now let's say you're working for an electrical contractor, and they just bring you in, you're not a regular employee, they're bringing you in for this job. All right, so now you're working on this job, and you get hurt. You're still going to be eligible for benefits under our state's workers' compensation law, but you will also be able to pursue a lawsuit, which is an entirely different claim against the owners and the general contractor. And whether you're an independent contractor or you're a 40-year employee of that electrical company, if you're hurt on the job and it's because of an absence of a safety device, that will enable you to get a lawsuit going and have your rights vindicated. So put another way, as long as it was not entirely your fault, the fancy wording is the sole proximate cause. What that means is we take a look at, why did this injury happen? Whose fault was it? Now, there's a lot of misinformation in the media about workers who decide to get drunk at lunch and then take a swan dive off a scaffold because they think, hey, that's a good thing to do and we can sue somebody. I would really suggest that how many people would really ever want to do such a thing, and realistically, would that occur? But if the worker was completely at fault, he got hurt because he chose not to use the safety device, he disconnected his harness and decided to take the swan dive off the scaffold, well, the owner and the general contractor have a complete defense there.
What about undocumented workers? Do the same laws, the same opportunities apply to them, or is that different?
Well, the undocumented worker has the right to a safe workplace too. If the employer brings him or her on the job and they get hurt, well, they're supposed to be able to get their medical bills taken care of. And it's going to be a question of making sure that they get their health care taken care of, their lost wages taken care of. And while the rules for undocumented workers can be different and they go back to their home countries or what their future damages would be, they're still able to get the health care. And that's what's important on the job. And in a crash or an accident of some sort, we want to make sure these people get taken care of. We're concerned about getting them physically better, mentally better, and then we can worry about what compensation, if any, they're entitled. So if there's somebody who's watching this and they're not and they don't have papers here in the United States, you still have rights. And owners and operators can't take advantage of these hardworking people because undocumented workers tend to get the worst jobs in the most dangerous conditions, and they're the ones most at risk because they're thought of, well, you're expendable. Well, the law here in New York has said you're not expendable. And if someone's hurt in that sort of situation, myself and the other attorneys who handle these type of cases, we're going to make sure to hold those responsible accountable for what they've done.
Mike, great information as always. Thank you so much for making some time for us today.
My pleasure.
That's going to do it for this episode of Ask the Lawyer. My guest has been Mike Greenspan of the law firm Greenspan Greenspan in the New York City area. Please take a sec, click on the button at the bottom of the screen so you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you want the best information about construction accidents, or you're ready to choose a lawyer that lawyers choose, please visit AskTheLawyers.com. I'm Rob Rosenthal for AskTheLawyers.com.